Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is nearly here. When posting this video, we will be 7 or 8 days away from the release, depending on when this video gets uploaded, of course. Like my previous video, where I played Spider-Man Remaster, I wanted to play Spider-Man Miles Morales before Spider-Man 2 released. There will be spoilers ahead for anyone that hasn't played Miles Morales or Spider-Man Remaster or the PS4 version. I will be discussing the stories, my thoughts, criticisms, and things that I hope they improve for Spider-Man 2. Also, if you liked the video, give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. The support would be greatly appreciated. Anyway, let's get into the video. Starting off, I gotta say, this man is a spammer. Nothing but a spammer. I like the character, I do. But his fight, oh, it really affected me in a bad way. How many grenades did this man have? Plus, he's throwing them at his nephew. Like, what? Talk about a weird family dynamic. Oh yeah, and Finn. I mean, where is she even getting these saw blades? Is she the second coming of Mary Poppins herself with her pockets? Forget the Avengers. Between the Prowler, the Tinkerer, and this guy. These are Earth's mightiest heroes, or villains, whatever. I forgot how big of a pain they all were for the first few times I played through this game. But anyway, this story isn't anything amazing, and frankly, the greatest strengths of it has to be just the development of Miles as a character, and how he struggles to be Spider-Man. Like Peter, he's constantly living two lives, and both of those said lives clash, and it's prevalent that it's taking a toll on Miles. As if protecting New York City by himself while Peter is away was one thing, Miles must deal with a terrorist group known as the Underground, which his childhood best friend Finn Mason is involved with and actually creates technology weapons for them. Her alter ego, the Tinkerer. Finn was gender swapped to be more emotionally involved with Miles' story, and I gotta say, I actually kinda liked it, or at least liked how they did that, but I wasn't a fan of the execution per se. The thing that I didn't like is that there wasn't any emotional baggage for them to me. The game story was so short, there wasn't a proper time to get emotionally invested in their relationship. In fact, you couldn't really tell if they were romantically involved or if they were just friends. There were moments where you thought both would happen. Also, her motivations didn't sit right with me. She helped this terrorist organization by letting them develop a larger reactor, or letting Roxxon develop this larger reactor that her brother created. That got him killed under the employment of Roxxon. Simon Krieger is the CEO of Roxxon, and he's the typical bad guy that thinks he can get away with anything. It was pretty obvious from the get-go that he was going to be a bad guy, just from his demeanor alone. But Roxxon goes on to hire the Rhino after he escapes due to the events from the beginning of the game. And later, Finn will kill Rhino for mocking Rick. And they also hired the Prowler, Aaron Davis, and Miles' uncle. Which I did like his uncle. He was probably my favorite newly introduced character in this game, because his motivation seemed way more realistic, and I understood where he was coming from, honestly. He wanted to prevent his nephew from putting himself in harm's way, like Miles' dad did in the first game, resulting in his death. And Aaron Davis did not want that for his nephew. And I didn't understand this thing, but he tried to stop Miles from indirectly killing himself by throwing grenades at him? What? But Finn's whole purpose was to overcharge a reactor that would blow up Harlem, while Miles tried to stop her. She was too blinded by rage and trauma to realize that what she was doing was utterly stupid. I mean, come on, man. Considering that she's that smart, she couldn't see that blowing up a nuclear reactor would harm people? Like, seriously. She had some major issues, so that's why I can't stand by her on that. And I don't really understand her motivations. While this goes on, it does get overcharged, but Miles will absorb the energy, but at a cost. He still has to output that energy somewhere. This is where Finn realizes the flaws in her plan. She will sacrifice herself by using some of her tech that she created to launch Miles and herself into the air so he can cause a massive explosion in the sky. The result did, of course, kill her, but you never actually see a body. I seriously doubt that she actually lived, though, because she was just a human after all, with no certain powers. The only way that she was able to even compete with Miles was because of the technology that she did possess. After the explosion, Miles falls to the ground, and a few citizens do see Miles' true identity, but they decided to keep it a secret. The best thing about the story was the fact that Miles grew as his own individual character and became his own Spider-Man. And honestly, the game never really portrayed Peter to necessarily overly overshadow Miles. And at the beginning of the game, he wasn't confident at all. But he did have that little sense of being overshadowed by Peter while Peter was in the game, if that makes sense. But by the end of the game, he knew what it meant to be Spider-Man, realizing that sometimes you have to make the hard decisions and that you can't save everyone. I think the best symbology was when he was finally accepted by the people of Harlem when they added his mural to the side of the building. It was sort of a nice coming of age story for Miles, and I'm glad that they decided to tell this story and this introduction in a spin-off like this one. That way we can actually focus on other storylines for him in Spider-Man 2 that doesn't involve training or having him come to terms with being Spider-Man. I hope that we get to see more of Miles and his uncle in Spider-Man 2 because they were my favorite characters that interacted with each other. They really had my attention in most of their scenes together. There were a couple that were just but for the most part, I enjoyed it a lot. I just hope that he kind of lays low on the grenades because, I mean, dude, it's your nephew. But moving on to the boss fights, this game didn't really do a whole lot for me in terms of boss fights because it kind of just felt a little rehashed from the previous game. Since you fight Rhino 2 more times, the Roxxon guards basically being a carbon copy of Sable's goons with a few add-ons. The underground enemies were different, but could get annoying if you were getting a lot thrown at you at once. And then you have Phin, which I know that they use the same technology, but it was like all those enemies at certain times basically fighting you at once during her fights. But one good thing about the combat in Miles Morales is the utilization of Miles' powers, his camouflage, and his Venom electricity. So I can't really complain about that. I just hope that the boss fights in Spider-Man 2 are better. I would just like to see more variety instead of spammy attacks like the Prowler, like Phin, like how Rhino just mindlessly charges you. And I get that's part of his character, but I would still like to see more variety. Something different than just dodging for a few minutes straight, then going for an attack as they're resting. I am really stoked, however, to see how they've improved on the swinging animations. Comparing Peter's swinging style to Miles makes Peter's look really bland and straight up boring to me. The way Insomniac portrayed Miles' swinging was, in my opinion, very impressive. You could have so many different freefall tricks leading into a swing with different animations, and it was fun to mix those tricks to see just how creative Miles would get with his swings. I really hope that they double down on this for both Miles and Peter, but keep them different at the same time, which leads to my next point. My favorite thing that they did with this game and with Miles is that they just show you how different Miles and Peter really are, but of course being similar in the way that they're Spider-Man. And even their own versions of being Spider-Man are completely different from one another. Like, for example, when Peter listens to J. Jonah Jameson's slander of Spider-Man, well, not that he really likes it, it's just that he likes to stay informed, I guess, about what J. Jonah Jameson has to say about Spider-Man. And Miles doesn't really like that, but he does find a podcast that he does enjoy because it talks about the new Spider-Man being cool, and I'm sure it just helps him boost his self-esteem. So he just naturally likes the praise and chooses to listen to that. Peter doesn't really have the abilities like Miles has either, so he's able to use his Venom electricity and invisibility cloaking or camouflage. This does change the gameplay to help with stealth, and honestly, Miles is an absolute powerhouse, especially around a group of enemies when he uses his Venom electricity. The way that some of Miles' swinging shows that he's still not 100% comfortable or used to swinging the way that Peter has, since Peter has 8 more years of experience in swinging. It's going to be a great switch up in Spider-Man 2, adding the symbiote to Peter while using the additions of what they will include with Miles' Venom abilities. Will make each of them feel unique, and I can't wait to try both of them out, especially that little tease of whatever that blue spark of energy is for Miles. And I did notice on my second or third playthrough, I guess, third or fourth, is that Miles absorbed that blue electricity from the reactor. I wonder if that has something to do with it, but maybe not, because when he exploded, it was still like that yellowish orange electricity that he has with his Venom ability, but we'll know soon. The suits in the game don't have a large variety like the previous one, but it is a smaller game through and through. The thing that I do like about the suits is the way that Miles adds everyday clothes to them, like a jacket from Vision's Academy and his backpack, a scarf, and warm winter clothing, a backpack with a cat, which is one of my favorites I really like the eyes and how they're different. They have more of a vertical approach to them than they do horizontal. And of course, the Into the Spider-Verse suit. You can't hate that one. And also the suit ability is really cool where it matches the frames per second of the movie, while the world around you can be 30 or 60 frames per second depending on which version of the fidelity that you're playing on. The gadgets did take a step down though, reducing all the gadgets to 4, but of course, again, it's showing the differences between Miles and Peter. Maybe it could be a lore thing where Miles wasn't ready for all of the technology that Peter had for his gadgets. Don't really know. But all in all, it's probably just development limitations because they probably didn't have a whole lot of time to work with it, but who knows. You do have the Venom abilities and they definitely make up for it. I would much rather sacrifice the gadgets to have the inclusion of the Venom abilities, in my opinion. But people will argue that this could have just been a DLC for Spider-Man, which I can see where people are coming from. It was an expensive spin-off game to be so short and to not really have as many options in suits or variety of enemies or just content in general. But me personally, I just love to have anything Spider-Man related, and it's a great story for Miles as a character, in my opinion. It sets Miles up for a better story in Spider-Man 2, and I can't wait to see how Miles reacts and responds to symbiote-controlled Peter. Their dynamic will be great, I'm sure of it. But this is going to be it for my Miles Morales video, and I cannot wait to get my hands on Spider-Man 2. What are your guys' thoughts on Spider-Man Miles Morales? Does it make you even more hyped for Spider-Man 2? Should it have been DLC? Let me know in the comment section down below. Again, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel for more gaming content. I will be covering Spider-Man 2 upon its release, of course, so stay tuned for those videos. And in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.